Alright, all praise unto Yahweh Shem Yahushai, double honors to the apostles of GMS, honest you brothers will be pushing this truth and sincerity throughout the four corners of the earth. Alright, and man, you've been seeing it, as the scripture says, man, how this thing was going, it's going to make it to where sometimes you was going to feel like you was in a state of peace, like we sort of getting into that almost complacent state where you got these nations out there within the Middle East going into a so-called ceasefire. But really, that all goes back onto what the prophecy said, man. All right, in that you was gonna get it to where it was gonna be like a woman that's in travail, man. You was gonna get it to where you was gonna get so-called peace talks, but really those peace talks were the biggest deception, because it gets the people into a docile state of being, man. All right, so when this truth comes out, just like how you had it to where this truth has been coming out, you was going to have it to where the truth was going to come out and people was going to overlook it, man. And that's why the scripture say, behold, in the last days it's going to come scoffers, man. All right, so you're going to get it to where people was going to scoff against the truth, because why? Because you got it to where, for us, majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have it to where you're gonna have disinformation come out there, right? And people are gonna be talking about how they was gonna be in a state of peace, man. All right, let me get that in the scriptures. It's gonna be in the book of 2 Peter. All right, 3rd chapter. All right, so this is the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, and I'm gonna start from the 3rd verse. So it says, knowing this first, they shall come in the last days scoffers. All right, it's an indication to the fact that we're in the last days, because you got a heap of scoffers, man. But like I said, I've put it together. I've told you how and why you got scoffers. It's that state of complacency. All right, that state of the sun will shine tomorrow. When you read in the book of Isaiah, the 24th chapter, what does he talk about? It says it's going to be a day of gloominess. All right, he says, hey, the scripture says how that the light coming from the sun is going to have it to where it's not going to cause her light to shine, man. Why? Because you got to have them ICBM nuclear missiles that going to come from them Russians, where they going to hit out them countries out there within the Americas and Europe and so on and so forth. You're going to have the dust coming off of that, and you're going to have what's known as a nuclear winter, man. And by way of that so-called nuclear winter, those prophecies talking about how the moon was going to be ashamed, the sun's going to be ashamed, and they ain't going to cause their light to shine. That's all going to come to pass. But before that, you're going to have it to where the prophecies also is going to be fulfilled, where it talks about how gross darkness was going to be upon these people, man. And that ain't just talking about the 12 tribes of Israel, which is the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. It's talking about all the masses of the people, man. All right? That's why you got vanities elevated within this society, man. Because does not the scripture say, follow your set in great dignity? All right? So the foolish things of this world is set in great dignity, bro. You start talking about geopolitical affairs that are happening out there, that's going to be all right. We're going to be all right. They're going to sort that situation out. But we know through the scriptures, the ultimate end goal of all of these different, really starting first with the elite banking families, their end goal is to create the most chaos that you've ever seen in your entire life, man. All right, that's establishing their so-called new world order. That's their agenda, man. That's what they're pushing for. But in order to create that great chaos, you gotta have the people in peace, man. And hence the reason why they be scoffing at the men of the Lord that hasten the day, hoping for the destruction to come forth, man. All right. So this is back in the book of 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter. It says, knowing this first, that they shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust. All right, why ain't they walking after anything else? Because they're all about, in this society, it's all about yourself, man. What you can achieve for yourself. All right, your own lust, your own desires, man. And hey, don't forget the scripture say in the book of 1 Corinthians, the 6th chapter, around about the 9th verse. All right, no, you're not knowing, no, you're not. The effeminate ain't gonna inherit the kingdom. All right, no adulterers. All right, no boasters of themselves and so on and so forth. That's pretty much talking on the same point, man. All right, how in this society, all that's elevated, all that's pushed forth, right, is one's own agenda. But when you go into the book of Ecclesiasticus, the 12th chapter and the 13th verse, the scripture clearly places it out for you. All right, it clearly gives you the instructions as to what is supposed to be the end all be all, man. it speaks on the fact that here's the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High. So that's one of the things you're supposed to be doing. Fearing the Most High God, following the law, statutes, commandments to the best of your ability. But you can only do so much because we're in Esau society. All right, we're in the society where the devil rules. So you can only do but so much. Hence the reason why faith is going to be the one thing that's going. You know, the scripture says the just going to live by faith, man. All right, but getting back onto the scripture I was quoting, the book of Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter, on about the 13th verse here, the conclusion of the whole matter: fear the Most High and keep His commandments. That's the whole duty of man. So you was created, you was incepted, all right, for the pleasure of the Most High and seeing you do His and fulfilling His works, man. Right, and that's starting first and foremost with the first fruits being the 12 tribes of Israel, really the elect. All right, which gonna institute the whole law, such commandments unto the not only the 12 tribes of Israel, because when Yahushua was on the scene, he said unto the disciples that came up to him privately, when you read the book of Mark the 13th chapter, right? They said it's not Mark the 13th chapter. It is Mark the 13th chapter. They said, when shall these things be? No, it's not. It's Matthew the 24th, I think. All right, they said, when shall these things be? Right, wherein you ain't gonna have one stone lying upon another. Pretty much they was asking when is destruction gonna come to pass. All right, and Yahushua said, oh, when you shall see this, that, and the third, all right, that's what's gonna happen. All right, and I believe, but the quote I was going for, he said pretty much, we've given up all for the, we've given up all to follow you. What we gonna get? And the Lord said, in the regeneration, going to prove to you that He's reincarnation within the scriptures. He said, in the regeneration, he shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Man. All right. So the first fruit's going to judge the 12 tribes, and in that you read in the book of Isaiah, right? We pretty much going to give the Lord statutes, commandments out, right, and establish them upon the whole earth, man. We're going to be a nation of kings and priests, man. Right. Pretty much. Institution, the will of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, man. All right, so let me get back onto the scriptures right here. This is the book of back in 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter, right in the 3rd verse. It says, knowing this first, that they shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts. All right, so this is the last days. Everybody's walking after their own desires of their own heart, man. All right, and saying this first, where is the promise of His coming? For since the fathers have fell asleep, all things continue as from the beginning of creation. So this state of peace that these people are in right now, right, that just goes back onto what the prophecies say, huh? Talking about how gross darkness is going to cover the whole world. All right, that state of peace that that so-called ceasefire and so on and so forth, man. That's all an illusion, man. All right, that's an illusion of the matrix, if you will, man. Because we are not in a state of peace, man. All right, we're in the precipice of world war, man. All right, that being that the Americans, NATO, and so on and so forth, they're gonna get it going with them Russians, man. Right, that's gonna happen, man. Why? Because it's within the scriptures, man. The Most High has said it forth. Let me see if I can find that in the book of Habakkuk. In fact, I'll get it in the book of Second Ezra, the 16th chapter, man. All right, because in the book of Second Ezra, the 16th chapter, it lets you know, look, how the Most High basically put the blueprint. All right, Most High put the blueprint forth. All right, well, what these nations is gonna do, and you can have it to where you got this peace talk and so on and so forth, but you still, that peace is not going to be achieved. Because why? Because the Most High is the Lord. If you read the book of Exodus, the 15th chapter, on the 3rd verse, man, it says the Lord is a man of war, man. All right, and you ain't going to have it to where peace is going to be established if the wicked are in rulership, man. All right, peace is going to be established when your house is in power, man. When the Lord has established His kingdom, as is spoken about in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, on the 44th verse. Okay, so this is the book of 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter. All right, I'm going to start from the top. All right, and then I go back to 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter. So this is the book of 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter, and the 1st verse on down. And it starts off, it says, woe unto thee, Babylon. Now, who is Babylon? All right, going to the book of Revelations, the 18th chapter, you can find out who Babylon is, man. Now, we know that to be America, that's Babylon, because what does Babylon mean? It's a combination of two words, Babel and Lon, the land of confusion. Now, what land perpetuates the confusion throughout the world? America, man. It's the book of Revelations. In fact, I'll go to the 11th chapter and then the 8th verse. And this is talking about the 12 tribes of Israel, all right? Before you had it to where the elders, all right? Starting from, the elders prior to the elders of GMS right now, their elders, right? They set this thing in motion for us to follow suit, man. All right, so this is book in the this is in the book of Revelations, the 11th chapter and the 8th verse. It says, and their dead bodies shall lie down in the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom. Why is it called spiritually called Sodom? Because you got all of that sodomy going up in it, all up in it, man. All right, it says, and Egypt. Now, why is it called spiritually called Egypt? Go to the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 68th verse. All right, this is Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 68th verse. All right, it says, and the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt again with ships. Now, what group of people or nation of people was brought into slavery went back into slavery, right? So, that's the key, because it says, he shall bring you back, right? He shall bring you back into captivity, right? Back into Egypt, right? So you should already know that's talking about the Israelites, all right? But then here's the clue to prove that it was the Negroes that went back into slavery. It says, by way of ships, again with ships, right? Letting you know it was the Negroes that were the so-called Negroes that you had out there in America, which went into captivity into Egypt, letting you know that America is Egypt within the scriptures, right? By the way of that I spoke unto thee, and I shall see it no more again. And there she shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. No man shall buy you, meaning to say the Lord wasn't going to send Joshua, Moses, or all of them leaders from back in the day that was going to deliver them. He's going to send his son Yahushua, right, to deliver them, right? But he was going to do it the way he done it before, because really this was the last captivity that the 12 tribes of Israel was going to go into, all right? And after, you was going to have the establishment of the kingdom of the Most High, man, where you're going to have righteousness, right, righteous dealings, and so on and so forth, man. All right? This is back in the book of Revelations, the 11th chapter and the 8th verse. It says, and their dead bodies shall lie down on the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. All right? So now we know that Egypt is talking about America. All right? We still need to prove the fact that Babylon is talking about America too, man. All right? It says, and they of people and kindred and tongues, right, and nations shall see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry and send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them. All right. Now let me just finish this up, and then I'll get back onto the Revelations, the 18th chapter. So this is the 11th verse. It says, and after 3.5 days, the Spirit of the Most High entered into them. Right, because was it John the 6th chapter and the 63rd verse? This is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The word quicken means to make alive. So when the Most High had it to where this word was coming out, all right, that's what made the men. That's what made the men to stand up on their feet, man. All right, the men at GMS to stand up on their feet, and not only GMS, people that are pushing this truth and sincerity, man. And that's not when you go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter and the 1st verse. All right, it talks about how how the Most High is going to set this man, raise his man up, and great fear is going to fall upon all of them that see them. All right, and it's going to be it's going to be like a strangeness. So when we get pulled out of this society, it's going to be the strangeness of our salvation, man. Because why? You ain't expecting us to be, the Most High to come back with the chariots and so on and so forth, man. All right. So this is in the book of Revelations, the 11th chapter and 11th verse, and it says, and after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from the Most High entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them that saw. Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter and the 1st verse on that. Right, and I heard a great voice coming up unto them, saying, come up hither and ascend, right, up to heaven in the clouds, and their enemies beheld them. And that's the precept for that is Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter. All right, now this is back in this is the point I was proving in Revelations, the 18th chapter. All right, it says, after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lit with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, Babylon the Great is fallen. The question still remains, to prove what we had out there in the book of 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter. Who is Babylon? All right, Babylon the Great is fallen. So we know that Babylon really, when this book in Revelations, the 18th chapter was written, we know that the man John had being a man of the scriptures, he would already known that Babylon had already been destroyed. So this had to be talking about another different place. But like I said, the question still remains, where is that place? All right, so here are some of the clues that's going to come forth. He says, and he cried mightily with a strong voice. He says, Babylon the Great is fallen and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, in the cage of every unclean bird and hateful every unclean and hateful bird. All right, now here's the clue. It says, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of wrath of her fornication. All right, and the kings of the earth have committed fornications with her, and the merchants of the earth have watched rich through the abundance of her delicacies. All right, so that's going into the American monetary system. All right, it's going into the American, what you know as how they perpetuate their so-called government structure and so on and so forth. And so you go out there to where countries out there in Eurasia and so on and so forth, they're going all by what? By the democracy, man. But when you go back in the day and back in history, what did you have? You had kings set up, all right, and those kings was gonna be instituted in whatever decrees they was gonna institute, but they were really more like dictators, and really that's what the Most High is finna to return back. But that's why the scripture says in the book of Daniel how that this beast was gonna be diverse from the other beasts, man. Right, and that it wasn't gonna have no king and no king structure, not per se, because really they do have kings and so on and so forth. They just hide out there in the background, man, under the name of them so-called elite banking families, man. They hide out there in the background, man. They pull the strings, man. That's what they're known as. That's why you have a thing known as the puppet leaders, man, which is your so-called presidents, or your so-called prime ministers. All right, it don't matter. Look, man, if you don't vote, right, the agenda of the elites is still going to be pushed forth, man. All right, you might vote for this party or that party and so on and so forth. The agenda of the elites is going to be still pushed forth, man. All right. Hey, people done voted for so-called Barack Obama back in the day, but guess what? He was still pushing the mark of the beast. He still got it to where they had troops out there in Iraq, right? And he said all of those things he was going, he's going to do away with. All right, going to prove what? Going to prove that the agenda of the elites, all right, is always going to be pushed forth right up until the time of the Most High is going to take him out of him. But see, that goes into the book of Job, the 20th chapter, when it says when he's about to fill his belly, right, the Most High is going to put him in straits, man. All right, so when he's about to achieve that so-called New World Order, the Most High was going to make it difficult for him. And ultimately, he's going by the will of the Most High, because the Most High wants to. Hey, the scripture says, if the wicked be increased. Now, the wicked could be specifically talking about Esau and his line, but we know through the scriptures there's instances where the wicked is talking about the other nations, man. All right, them other heathen nations, man. So the scripture says, if the wicked be increased, them heathen nations, along with Esau, all right, if they be increased for what? They were going to be increased for the sword, man. All right, so the sword, the modern day sword is what? The ICBM nuclear missiles are going to be coming from these different nations that are preparing for that war, man. Here it is, they're talking about peace and ceasefires, and you go to where one of the biggest shipments or deployments of arms has just gone out there to reinforce NATO, man. All right, going to show you what? They're still in that preparation mode. See, the agenda that America wanted to achieve, which was to take Assad out, hasn't been achieved. And as far as that hasn't been done, you was gonna still have what you was gonna have the cards leading up towards, man. Going back into the history, World War I, right up until right before you had it to where I forget what president it was that was assassinated. All right, right before that happened, all right, you was in a so-called state of being in peace, man. But see, that's what we know as the calm before the storm, man. Because before you have it doesn't matter how great the storm is, right? No matter how big it is, you got what's known as a calm period before it, man. All right. Getting back onto the scripture, so it says, "For all the nations have drank of the wine of a wrath of fornication, and the kings of the earth have watched and the kings of the earth, furthermore, the merchants of the earth have watched rich through our abundance of our delicacies, man." All right, so we know that's gonna be talking about America, man. All right, so let's go back onto the book of 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter, and I'm gonna start back up on the top, because now we know what Babylon is talking about. All right, and we know what Egypt is talking about, because it's talking about where the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans, all right, were put into captivity. It's talking about the country that perpetuates the government and philosophies in sodomy and so on and so forth, man. All right. Now we're going to get into what is going to be the judgment of them. And you're going to see within the scriptures, Lord said, liken unto, really, Lord liken unto his, he's likened unto what's going to come forth, which is that being the judgment, likened unto an arrow coming from a strong archer, man. And the scripture says, who's going to be able to turn it back, man? Who's going to be able to turn the arrow back, man? All right? So let's see that within the scriptures. This is the book of 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter, and the first verse. It says, "Woe be unto thee, Babylon and Asia. Woe be unto thee, Egypt and Syria. gird up your loins with sackcloth, right? Bewail your children, right? And be sorry, for your destruction is at hand. So, hey, I think it's in the book of Isaiah the 13th chapter. The scripture says that these Russians, their what you know as armory, all right, roughly paraphrasing what the scripture says, their armory is not going to have the pity on the wound, man. And that's why it's saying here within the scriptures, bewail your children, because guess what's going to happen, man? Right? And one day you're going to have famines, plagues, but you're also going to have the loss of life, man. You're going to have it to where a lot of them army geezers out there, well, they was going to get the drop, man. All right? They was going to get their light put out, man, so to speak, man. Okay? So this is the back in the book of 2 Ezra, the 16th chapter. And this is the 3rd verse, and it says, the sword is set upon you, all right, and who is it that may turn it back? All right, let's go to Isaiah the 34th chapter and the 5th verse.
I tend to try, I'm a bit earlier to beat the traffic,
but because of that, I'm
Okay. In fact, I'm going to start from the top. This is Isaiah 34:1, but the point is in the 5th verse. It says, come ye, O nations, to hear, and hearken ye people, that the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world, and all the things that come forth of it, for the indignation, which is the righteous judgment of the Most High. That's what the word indignation means, man, righteous anger, all right? So it says, for the indignation, right, of the Lord is upon all the nations, all right? So it ain't going to be specific to the Edomites. It's not specific to Moab. It's upon all the nations, all right? That's why you got it to where the precept in the book of Zechariah, the 14th chapter on the 12th verse, it says, this shall be the plague wherewith all the people that have fought against Jerusalem, which is all the different nations upon the earth, all right? All the nations that have fought against Jerusalem